Hey everyone, my name is Ashley Labrador and I work for the Greenwood Genetics Center's Education Division. As you might already know, this month we're going to be celebrating DNA Day all month long virtually. What we're going to do today is answer some student questions that us instructors get pretty frequently. For question number one, we get this one pretty frequently from students as they're boarding the mobile lab. They board the mobile lab and they realize that we have a fridge and a microwave and they ask us why. Few answers here. The first is just that the samples and the gels that you guys use in the labs, if we don't refrigerate the samples, they kind of just degrade in quality. And then if we don't refrigerate the gels, they lose their jelly-like texture. We can't run any tests on them. They just kind of get mushy and unusable. The microwave, sometimes experiments require heat to kind of expedite the process. We also use the fridge and the microwave for our lunches. As much as we enjoy teaching you guys, we also really enjoy eating lunch. So we need the fridge to keep our food cold until we use the microwave to heat it up. For question number two, we get this question when we are teaching labs involving chromosomes. While we're teaching these labs, we're telling students that your expected amount of chromosomes is 46 total, or 23 pairs, where you're getting half from mom and half from dad. We often talk about other conditions that might arise when you have either structural or numerical changes in these chromosomes, such as Down syndrome, trisomy 21, where you'd have a third copy of that 21st chromosome. Students sometimes ask the question, well, hold on, if I eat somebody's chromosomes, or more specifically, I had a student ask me if he were to make a chromosome sandwich, would he then have extra chromosomes? My answer to this is no. If you think about it, there have been times where you've probably consumed someone's cells before. If you think, have you ever shared a drink with someone or eaten off the same fork as somebody? There's a chance that you're transferring their cells. And if you remember that your chromosomes are kept inside of the nucleus of the cell, you may be consuming those chromosomes. That absolutely does not mean that you're going to be incorporating their chromosomes into your chromosomes. It's not going to change your chromosome number at all. You are going to be fine. The next question we hear pretty frequently regarding a few different traits, but we're going to talk about height just because we hear this one kind of a lot. Why am I so short if my dad is so tall? Good question. Firstly, you have to remember that you do get half of your genetic information from your mom and half from your dad. So it really just does depend on what you inherit and from who. But the secondary answer, kind of the more important one, is that height isn't as straightforward as that. A lot of your traits aren't. Not everything is going to be a single gene trait, meaning that there's not one gene that you inherit that then determines your phenotype or the way you look. So for height, it's actually called a polygenic trait, meaning there's a few different genes, a few different alleles that you would need to inherit in order to end up being super tall. The next one isn't so much a direct question from students as it is just an observation of mine. I feel like a lot of times students get kind of confused when we talk about traits being dominant or recessive. I feel like sometimes the term dominant allele will convey to students the impression that that allele is the one that's most common in the general population, and that's just not true. The term dominant only refers to that trait's expression or that allele's expression over another allele. It doesn't have to do with how common it is in the population. There are actually a lot of disorders and diseases that are caused by the presence of a dominant allele, such as achondroplasia or Huntington's disease. That certainly doesn't mean that they're what's most popular in the general population. Our next question comes usually when we are teaching our forensics labs. Students will ask how we can test DNA found at a crime scene when it's just a really small sample. If you watch CSI or Forensic Files, I'm sure you're familiar with this sort of DNA extraction and testing. A lot of times they're running tests on a single strand of hair or just a few skin cells. We can still test the DNA from these really small samples. What we would need to do is just run a process called PCR. So what PCR does is it amplifies the DNA, or it makes a bunch of copies of the DNA. So then even though we had a really small sample to begin with, once we run PCR, we have a lot of copies of that DNA, so we can actually run the testing and get pretty clear results. Another question that students ask pretty regularly has to do with what types of degrees we have and then what we can do with those degrees. So all of the instructors do have their bachelor's degree. I got my bachelor's degree from New York University, where I studied biology and education, and bachelor's degrees do require 4 years of studying to complete. Most entry-level positions in the science field do require at least a bachelor's degree. If you were to work in a job where you are working more one-on-one with patients, you would need some further education, whether it's your master's degree. Say if you wanted to be a genetic counselor, you would need your master's degree, or if you want to do something even further, you would need either your PhD or your MD, something like that. Our last question is one that we got quite frequently, I'd say, in the few months right before things sort of slowed down for us all. Hey, can you guys cure coronavirus? Gonna go ahead and say no, we can't. If we could, we would. Can't do that. It is not a genetic disorder. It is a virus. No, we cannot cure it. But good news is you guys and me and everyone, we can all help stop the spread just by washing our hands, staying home, and just being safe in general. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure you follow us on Facebook so that you can follow along with us as we celebrate DNA Day all month long. Thanks. Be a geneticist or work in the clinic, you might need your PhD or your MD. There's a man behind me walking a dog, maybe. I think he has a dog. Oh, it looks like a cute dog. Nice. That's great. Staying 6 feet away though. Wow, very good.